So I have finally decided what to do with Treasure in the Snow, and I'm not going to exact upon myself that I have to do a chapter a week. And I figure if I don't put the stress on myself, then I'll just read it, but I'll read it over time as I can, kind of a thing. Since I had some time this morning, and I've already done my chapters for the Great Hunt. I thought about doing the Great Hunt too, but I don't really have time for as long of a chapter as it is, and Treasure in the Snow, the chapters are really short, so it doesn't really take that much time to read it, and it's more the upload time, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, but don't expect it to be like on a regular basis. Anywho, so Treasure in the Snow, Chapter 2 by Lil. When the girl's jade eyes opened, she smelled a flowery fragrance and felt hard yet warm arms around her. She looked upwards and found a face like a statue of a goddess, lovely yet rigid. With an expressionless face and an even voice, the woman spoke. I am Selene, mistress of shadows. I have let you live, thus you are mine. You are bound to me, and your only escape is one of us being given to your former fate. Now speak your name. If it displeases, it will be changed. After thinking a few seconds, the girl said timidly, I am Cherie, and not that I'm scared, but where's Mamma? I am your mother now. We shall see about your name once inside. Lady Selene stepped out of her ride, carrying the tiny, sheet-clothed Cherie in her arms. The sight before the browned child terrified her, and her small fingers gripped themselves tightly to the ominous woman holding her. There were nothing but rotted corpses as far as the eye could see before them. The torn, misshapen heaps that formed little mounds of this field of death were only disturbed by the wind and snow. The putrescent smell of decaying flesh caused the child to heave from disgust. Lady Selene almost dropped her to keep from the mess. Tears streamed down Cherie's soft cheeks as she looked up with a helpless expression at the black-cloaked woman holding her. The new mistress's face was full of distaste, but her displeasure was directed toward the crying 6-year-old clinging to the ebony folds of her shawl, not toward the grotesque mounds scattered across the plain. Cherie struggled with comprehension as the man called the 4 charcoal stallions, pulling the carriage. While the horses pulled it away into the gaping cavern, the mistress of shadows turned around. There was a short path made of snow-covered bone that led to a gigantic castle carved into the mountainside. An unkempt hedge of thorns lined the way as Lady Selene began to move down it. Each step that she made caused the bones beneath her feet to snap and crack. Cherie jumped in the woman's arms every time. It was dark and horrible, and the swirling snow held the closest thing to clarity about her. Cherie's sheet, somehow, was managing to keep in her warmth, but she shivered from cold anyway as they came to a great, tall door made of lifeless skulls, apparently screaming as if they had belonged to people who died wailing in torture. Selene, mistress of shadows, stood before the huge door in silence. When Cherie glanced up at her face, the owner of this dreadful place had glowing amethyst eyes. When the light in Selene's eyes faded, Cherie heard a sound like a serpent's hiss from the door, and turned to look at it. A rush of sweet fragrances hit the two when the mighty doors burst open. Light shone from within, piercing the tumultuous darkness outside. The door was not made of skulls, just the outer face. They entered her new home, and the door slammed shut with a loud boom. The lady set Cherie down in a large, barren room. There were no furniture or paintings. The walls were the color of burnt sienna, and were marred only by one arching hallway on each floor of the 4. The floor was also that same droll color. And then the child's eyes turned toward the ceiling. "Oh, how pretty!" "It is said pretty," Selene chided. Cherie didn't hear her. She was far too enthralled with the images painted above her. The ceiling was completely covered in fairies, elves, unicorns, druids, dwarves, griffin, mermaids, centaurs, and so many other such fanciful creatures. They were playing and dancing together at some great feast on a plain with scattered trees and wild flowers by the ocean. Even a witch enjoys a little beauty, whatever they may think, Mistress Selene spoke quietly. But enough wasting time. We must see to your name and assign you quarters and duties. Still gazing upward, Cherie followed the witch, wondering where this was and how she'd arrived here, what she'd find here, and most importantly, what was this terrifying woman going to do with her? They had traveled down the south arch, passing many oak doors, when they finally came to the last one in the hall. It had double doors, and they were engraved with a man who was obviously some sort of warrior. He was in full armor, and he had his sword drawn, but he was sitting in a forest glade in the middle of a battlefield, full of fighting soldiers, reading a book. The Lady Selene pushed open the doors to reveal a vast library. The bookshelves climbed all the way to the ceiling. There were books everywhere, even littered upon the only furniture that were not shelves, 4 large cushioned chairs and 2 long plain tables. She walked over to the table on the left and began to search for a book she had in mind, amidst the piles heaped upon it, while Cherie admired the fact that this was the first room where she had seen a carpeted floor. It was sky blue, and the ceiling was midnight blue. The walls were just covered with all those books. "Come, girl, I've found it." Cherie obeyed. The old tome that her lady was flipping through was dusty and torn in several places, but the witch swished through the pages with little care. For some reason they were all white and intact, despite the deterioration of the cover. Cherie wondered if Lady Selene's being a witch meant she could cast spells and work magic. She knew little of witches. "Ah," the Mistress of Shadows said coolly, as she found the page she was looking for. "Cherie means dearest or beloved." Cherie liked her name very much as she learned its meaning. Her mother must have loved her to name her so well. She missed her mother. "Well, it is satisfactory." "Oh, really?" "When I speak, do not doubt it, child." "I get to keep my name." "That is what I just said," replied the witch with growing emphasis. "Thank you," cried Cherie as she rushed forward and hugged Selene tightly. The woman's eyes widened for a moment, and then she shoved the 6-year-old away harshly. Cherie stumbled to the floor and started to cry. She looked up at her benefactor with her round, big eyes and found no sympathy in the witch's face. In an icy tone, Lady Selene said, "If you wish to be fond with someone, go pet the cat or let Alga rattle on with one of her old stories. Do not seek affection from me." There was no doubt that the cold, direct way the woman spoke was a warning, but Cherie was young or naive or something other than stupid, for she replied innocently, "But then, who do you love?" The Mistress of Shadows slapped Cherie hard upon the left cheek. Then she grabbed her arm roughly and dragged her across the floor to the hall. After practically throwing the girl out, she slammed the double doors of the library shut, leaving a weeping Cherie in an unfamiliar, terrible castle. Dun dun dun. Chapter 2.